Our work this past year would not have been possible without the collaborative relationships we have fostered in Greater Lowell. I want to take a moment and thank the GLCF board for their unwavering support and encouragement, not only over this past year, but over the last 5+ that I've been here. I want to extend a warm welcome to our new board members. And of course, a tremendous thanks to those departing board members, Jim Shannon, Steve Jonkus, Fiona Cushy, and Matthew Donahue, for their outstanding service over the years and all the advice and guidance that they have given me. Thank you so much. I also want to thank our donors. In fact, without the donors, the Greater Lowell Community Foundation does not exist. As noted earlier, we've got some 289 endowed funds. There's 500+ individuals that make up those endowed funds. And of course, that totals close to $51 million. The Greater Lowell Community Foundation is the community's foundation. Also, I need to thank the COVID donors. I mean, many have been our donors all along, but we've got many new donors, both large and small, throughout the last year that have provided funds, the funds which make up the numbers that I noted a moment ago and will continue to support efforts to abate the pandemic as we proceed. And of course, I want to thank our sponsors, the business community. We've got great support from our business community. I want to do a major shout out to our presenting sponsor, Enterprise Bank and Trust, our platinum sponsors, Nancy L. Donahue, Trinity EMS, Eastern Bank, DCU, the Lowell Sun, and our gold sponsors, Eastern Salt Company and S&R Corporation. And I also like to acknowledge the GLCF team. I knew they were amazing, but over this last year, just absolutely incredible. It's amazing. Just the work that is done by 6 people in this office over the last 16 months has been nothing short of incredible. And that's Jennifer Aradia, Howard Amadon, Janine Naco, Fatima Palermo, and Sharon Kim. Thank you all for what you guys do. And no, you can't have tomorrow off. And of course, a heartfelt thank you to all the nonprofits for the work that they do every single day under very difficult circumstances to provide for our neighbors in need. They have been our partners throughout the history of the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, but in particular over this last period. It has been likewise an amazing relationship to do the things that need to get done collectively. So here we go, back to March 13 of 2020. COVID rolls into town, anxiety's through the roof. Nobody knows exactly what to do. Messages are coming from different directions all over the place. So in response, the foundation established the GLCF Emergency Response Fund. A few months later, in May, the Massachusetts COVID Relief Fund was rolled out. Many of you may recall last June at our annual meeting, First Lady Lauren Baker, who was instrumental with regard to this, spoke at our event, and they have been very, very generous to the Greater Lowell Community Foundation. And then just past fall, it was the Commonwealth COVID grant program was established. With these 2 external funding sources, together with the GLCF funding, in the scheme of things, and relatively speaking, of course, raising money was relatively the easy part of what we had to do over the last 16 months. The harder part was how do we efficiently and equitably award these funds across our entire service area to address the most pressing needs. The foundation opted to do this in 3 phases, like many of our colleagues across the state, and we did it with lots of help from our community partners. The intel and the data was invaluable as to how we decided to move and when to move. So just right out of the gate, so back in March, as we established that initial fund, we did preparedness and prevention, fundamentally emergency grants. We reached out to the community and just said, what do you need? And folks needed gift cards, they needed PPE. We delivered checks, as it was noted earlier by Mike, within 24 hours in some instances, and in many instances dropped off PPE at doorsteps so people would have the protection that they needed, particularly in light of the information that people were getting, which was not clear as to how this all played. And I think that first phase that we went a long distance and had a major impact to reduce, in many respects, a lot of the anxiety in the community. At least we hope that's what it did. So the next phase, the response, probably lasted about a little over a year. Started probably around in May of 2020, and we'll wrap that up probably, this summer as we roll through some of the funds that we had made note of already. And throughout the course of the analysis that we did, and from the input that we had from so many of our partners, we addressed the needs, and we addressed the agencies that had those needs. And there were many. We funded addiction, we funded homelessness, social emotional needs, childcare, remote learning, technology support, and much, much more. But the most pervasive by far was food insecurity, followed by housing insecurity. It was just the basic needs day to day not met. And what it made us realize was that how close so many people were to the margin, and how it didn't take that much to tip them over that particular margin. And the things that so many of us take for granted so often, which is the roof over our head and food on the table, was a major need for so many people. That was not something that they could take for granted. And so here we are, June 2021. I'd like to think we're winding down on the response phase, and we're into a bit of a recovery phase as we go forward. And as we do that, we will continue to do the analysis that we've done in the past. And there's still significant need out there. Certainly one that appears to be a major need that has come up, clearly by no surprise, is the mental health issue. It looks like it can be a significant issue as we go forward. The National Alliance of Mental Health Illness reports that more than half of all Americans say that COVID-19 has had a negative impact on their mental health. In particular, are the youth on the one end and the elders on the other. And this issue is even more acute in underserved communities, including those communities of BIPOC and LGBTQ+ communities. GLCF will look to prioritize these emerging needs and, as necessary, raise funds to address them as best as we possibly can. Also, there may be some new funds on the horizon with regard to the state from the Department of Housing and Community Development, who has CARES Fund money through CDBG. We've been in conversation with them as to see where that may be, and that focus is going to be on food insecurity. We're not totally clear at the moment exactly how that's going to play out, but it will play out. We will participate as we continue to work as best as we can with our partners to address the key needs in our community. So I want to move to a different topic for the moment. And right now, I'd like to recognize one of our departing board members. The Community Connector Award is an award that is given at the Greater Lowell Community Foundation Celebrate Giving event in the fall. The process has community members nominate individuals and organizations for this award who have stood up and stood out in support of their community in extraordinary ways. Beginning this year, the award will be named in honor of a past board member, Steve Jonkus. Steve has been a board member for 15 years, joining in 2006 when Dick Donahue was the board chair. Steve also served as the chair of the board from 2010 to 2013, and as well as many of the committees during his tenure, in particular the program committee and the strategic planning committee. Steve has a deep sense of community, particularly in Lowell, and that need is that you need to get engaged, and sitting on the sidelines is not an option. I suspect much of this comes from his 30 years plus of development and government experience. Steve introduced me actually to the foundation some 6 years ago. Thank you very much, Steve. And since then, we've been engaged in many conversations, some at board meetings, some over coffee, some elsewhere. Steve is always a voice of encouragement and inspiration, championing topics from early childhood to homeless to opioid addiction. He would always say to me, if I'm talking too much, please tell me to shut up. Well, that has never happened, and it never will. I have had the great expectation of those conversations will continue. I have every expectation that those conversations will continue. Steve, as you know, I've got your cell phone number. Don't go too far. We'll keep in touch. Thank you for your outstanding service. to the Greater Lowell community and for all you did for the board. Thank you.
Can I just say, I'm very grateful for having had the opportunity to serve. And it's helped enrich my life in many, many ways. And especially in terms of being engaged with all of you in trying to make a difference, to be positive change agents. And it's remarkable to see how much the foundation has grown over the course of the 15 years or whatever that I've been serving on the board, thanks to all of you. So very much appreciated. And I'll try to do what I can to continue to deserve the honor. So thank you to Jay and the board. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Chet. Thank you, Steve, excuse me. So moving along. So as we talk about being stronger together, I'd like to share a few notes that came in the mail to the Greater Lowell Community Foundation. And I'm pleased to say that these particular notes came along with checks as well, which is what does happen in the mail a lot here. So here are three comments that I think are appropriate given today's event. First, thank you for keeping people sheltered, fed, schooled, and safe during these terrible times. Second one, this has been a time of change and fear and coming together. Thank you for all that you are doing to bring food, shelter, medical supplies, and a sense of comfort to us all. And lastly, these are moments when we all need to pull together. Certainly, these comments were addressed to the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, but I think everybody knows they apply to everybody. All the nonprofits, anybody that's gone out of their way to help anybody ever for that matter, and certainly over the period of this pandemic over the last 16 months. So many people pulling together to help each other out, because together we are stronger. It is now my pleasure to introduce our speakers, and I will start with Tim Baker. Tim Baker joined the Westford Food Pantry over 4 years ago and assumed the role of president in 2019. He is very excited to support the pantry's mission to feed and support our neighbors in need and lead the community to end hunger. Tim recently retired to focus his efforts supporting philanthropic causes on a local level. Prior to his retirement, Tim spent 35 plus years in executive and financial management. Please welcome Tim Baker.
Thank you, Jay. Good afternoon. My name is Tim Baker, and as Jay said, I've volunteered at the Westford Food Pantry for the past 4 years, and I've lived in Westford with my family for over 25 years. The Westford Food Pantry started literally as a drawer in a metal file cabinet back in the 1960s, used to collect food to support our local veterans. Since then, we have grown significantly, and we have held fast to our original mission of eliminating hunger in our town and surrounding towns. We are an open pantry, here to help our neighbors when they are experiencing tough times. Over the past 14 months of the COVID pandemic, we have had to make many adjustments to our service model. The pandemic forced us to move our pantry outdoors onto the sidewalk for many months, weathering the winter weather, and then purchasing coolers in the spring so that we could continue to offer pre-packed bags of food and proteins. But we are proud to say that during this since the start of the COVID, thanks to great community support, we have not missed 1 week. There have been some silver linings in the changes we made during the pandemic. Prior to COVID, we would have multiple clients in our 180 square foot store at a time, and it was a busy space. As we moved back inside this spring and reopened the store, we only allowed one client at a time to shop in the store. This allowed us to have 2 stations and provide a little more efficiency to our clients. But an unexpected benefit to this change was the one-on-one time that this created inside the pantry. Now, as I fill their bags at their direction in the pantry, we have a chance to chat and to learn more about what is going on in each of our lives. It's become a social visit that we weren't able to have before, and it's one that I look forward to each week. Amidst the COVID pandemic's unique challenges, we were and still are amazed with the level of community support that we have received. Support came in many forms: food donations, monetary donations, people giving of their time. The support came from individual townspeople from ages 5 to 85 years old. Support also came from organizations such as the Greater Lowell Community Foundation. Without this timely support, the Westford Food Pantry would not have been able to help our clients. One of our individual supporters was a gentleman we affectionately nicknamed the Deacon, as we found that he's also a deacon at a local church. Well, one night, very early in the COVID battle, we were outside delivering pre-packed bags to our clients when this pickup pulls in and a tall, thin man hops out and says, "Hey, how can I help? What do you need?" Well, from that day forward, every Wednesday night, rain or shine, the deacon makes a trip to Costco and then comes by to drop off a food donation. But not just any food donation, something different each week, something he thinks people will like that we can't offer, like donuts or fresh bread or fresh milk, or in the summer, popsicles for the kids. It's that kind of grassroots support that helps us help our clients. You may wonder, what else can generous donations from a foundation such as yours enable us to do? Well, we supplement the school breakfast and school lunch programs. With children staying at home and attending school virtually, parents face additional pressure on the family food budget. We use donated funds to supply healthy snacks and juice boxes and other items not available at the food banks for the children who are homeschooling. This eases a little pressure off the budget and supplies the children with some healthy alternatives. Back in November, with families struggling to put food on the table every day due to the loss of job or the loss of benefits, the thought of the holidays was overwhelming. The pantry was able to step in and use donations to help with the cost of purchasing food needed to serve a holiday meal. We helped over 200 clients provide a Thanksgiving and a Christmas dinner for their families. And this spring, we've continued to help make the holidays a fun time by distributing special items. We recently supplied Easter hams to all our clients, and last week's hamburgers and hot dogs to support and celebrate Memorial Day and the beginning of summer. Well, the holiday spirit flows both ways. Maria is a single mom in her 30s who's been coming to the pantry off and on for a few years. She's always soft-spoken and polite, frequently asking me if she's taking too many cans of vegetables or too many cans of fruit. Well, this past year, as the holidays were approaching, her visits became a bit more frequent as she apologetically visited the pantry for a little extra help. The week or so before Christmas, she comes to the pantry and only brings one bag instead of the usual two to pick up her food. Well, when I moved to take her bag, she says to me, "No, this week I don't need any food. This week, this bag is for you." As she says this, she reaches into her bag and pulls out 5 small gift bags for each member of our team. I feel so surprised. I'm holding this bag in my hands, and I feel it's overflowing with her caring and her deep gratitude. I feel humbled by her thankfulness, her desire to give back to us. I wanted nothing more than to give her a hug and say thanks. Another challenge for our clients is procuring simple items that many of us take for granted, such as personal care products and cleaning supplies. A number of these items are not covered under food assistance programs or available at the regional food bank, and they're expensive to purchase. With the COVID pandemic, cleanliness was and still is a very important weapon to fighting the virus. Again, as a result of your generous donations, we're able to supply our clients with basic household needs, such as masks and disinfectants, laundry soap, toothpaste, and other personal care items. Looking back at this past 14 to 15 months dealing with the COVID pandemic, we all witnessed some horrible things. But the overall positive resilience of people joins us together as a community to help our neighbors in need and that truly is a wonderful thing to witness. Soft-spoken and humble, Mike's a big burly guy who likes to cook for his family of 5. I've gotten to know Mike pretty well over the past couple of years, as we always have great discussions about how the local sports teams are doing, as he's typically wearing some type of Boston sports sweatshirt. Mike has had some health issues over the past couple of years, and the pantry has been a great resource for him and his family. As I said, Mike likes to cook. And one week, when we were just about done filling his bags and dissecting the Boston sports scene, he pauses and he takes a step towards me. I look over, and very quietly he asks me, I was wondering, would it be okay if the tomato soup and the elbow macaroni were all the same brand? I paused and I said, of course, not a problem, but I'm curious. Well, he just looks at me and he says, it just tastes better, and that's how my family likes it. Well, at that moment, I realized it isn't just about the food. It's about community. It's about support that puts that food on his table. It's about the pride each person takes in providing for their family. It's about all of us together, now and moving forward, helping our communities. Thank you again for your generous support of our organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you.
Appreciate those comments. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Gene Goldsberry. Gene is the CEO of Minuteman ARC. Minuteman ARC's mission is improving the lives of children and adults with disabilities by increasing independence, personal choice, and self-advocacy. It is a true lifespan organization with early intervention for baby and toddlers, extra step pediatric therapies for ages 3 to 22, Tindernook, and outdoor experiential and social programs for ages 5 to 12. Rehabilitation for adults with developmental and physical challenges, employment and community services for teens, and adults who want to work in many opportunities throughout our communities, 8 group homes, independent living services, and adult foster care. Please welcome Gene Goldsberry.
Thank you very much, Jay. So, how do you fit 1,000 people on the ARC? That was our challenge as we began to navigate the storm of COVID-19 and the rising tide. That's 800 plus children and adults with developmental disabilities and over 225 staff. The one thing we knew was that we were together and we were headed into the storm. And COVID hit us. It did. We were hunkered down in our homes, many in group homes. But we held on to one another and did the best we could to support each other and take care of each other. Imagine someone like Eric, one of our amazing staff who lives in Lowell. He volunteered to quarantine when we had our first cases of COVID. This meant packing an overnight bag and moving into the house for 2 weeks straight. He couldn't see family and friends. He couldn't leave for even an hour. Through the efforts of Eric and many other caring staff, we made it through. Now, as the floodwaters are beginning to recede, we see that we are still together and we know that we are stronger than ever before. We learned some things as we were riding the storm in our ARC. The most important was about community support. Friends and even strangers dropped off cloth masks when there was no PPE to be purchased at any price. People dropped off cases of paper towels and toilet paper. Remember last spring when everybody's hobby was finding toilet paper? A Buddhist temple in Bedford gave us a box of KN95 masks. They were like gold. Families offered ideas and financial support. Most importantly, the Greater Lowell Community Foundation provided us with funds through grants, which allowed us to purchase that needed PPE once it was available. So when Eric volunteered a second time to quarantine in a home with COVID positive cases, he actually had PPE to keep himself and everyone else safe. He had masks, he had a face shield, he had gloves, he had a gown. He had all the PPE he needed, again, to keep everyone safe. All of this PPE, that was our new uniform. The foundation also provided needed funds to enable us to provide hazard pay for the hardworking staff in our group homes, many of whom quarantined with individuals who became sick, and all of whom risked their lives every day when they went to work. The foundation also provided funds for iPads so our clients could access all of the Zoom programming we were producing. They will keep these iPads for years to come and will use them for doing Zoom programming, for connecting with others via FaceTime, for doing email, and just being able to be connected with the larger world. Greater Lowell Foundation's grants also provided needed funds to buy food when food was scarce. Remember our next hobby last year, finding a chicken thigh or a pound of hamburger? We also learned how to do some things for ourselves that we had never done before. Within 4 days of closing the doors of our day programs on March 13th, we learned to deliver programming via Zoom to hundreds of people stuck in their homes. We learned to do telehealth visits for families of babies and toddlers in our early intervention program. We band together with other ARCs across Massachusetts and learned to source and bulk purchase PPE and other needed supplies. For example, we found a distiller out in Western Mass who had changed from producing liquor to producing hand sanitizer when hand sanitizer was so scarce. The joke is, our hand sanitizer smells like vodka. We developed our own DoorDash type delivery service, including staff members dropping off PPE, food, and other necessities to homes that were quarantined, because of course, no one could go out to get anything. So there we were in our own little DoorDash delivering things to them. We learned how brave and dedicated and fearless our staff are when they quarantined and volunteered to quarantine in homes that were positive for COVID. We have a lot of Erics at Minuteman ARC. We worked hard to show our appreciation to these wonderful staff. We visited them with signs. We did parades around with music and dancing and soap bubbles. We gave them little Dunkin' Donuts gift cards and messages. We sent them emails and notes of thanks. And perhaps the most meaningful was sharing the many messages that we received directly from families. You heard Jay talk about the messages that the Greater Lowell Foundation received. We received those as well, dozens and dozens of them. Our consumers drew pictures, people did stickers, we had all kinds of wonderful messages. And we put many of these together into a large collage, and we had them made up into huge posters that we posted on the front door of every home and every building where we have our services. That way, whenever a staff person came to work, the first thing they saw was a greeting of appreciation. One of the biggest lessons we learned through COVID was how resilient the people we serve became. They learned how to use Zoom and used it to connect to our programs and to one another. They figured out how to link into programs. They learned how to turn their cameras on and off, how to mute and unmute themselves, something lots of us still have problems with. They showed up every day curious and ready to learn, and learn they did. They made cupcakes and then went to making salads and then entrees. They drew pictures and then progressed to joint murals and mosaics. They learned aerobics and yoga, and they never lost hope that we would protect them and the world would return to normal. Now, as COVID subsides and our ark has landed on solid ground, I look back at the last 15 months and I can see that although this was the worst tragedy our country or the world has had to encounter, there are gifts brought to us by this pandemic. The first gift, of course, is comfort with an ability to easily navigate technology, Zoom, and the many other virtual platforms. It's a gift we'll continue to use for many years, maybe forever. We love it, we hate it, but we use it. The most important gift of COVID is our sense of resilience through collective strength and relying on one another. We know that both as an organization and as individuals, we are resilient in ways we would never have guessed. It is this resilience that will carry us forward through the end of the pandemic and into a new future, because we are not going back to normal. We are going forward to a new way of life for ourselves, our organizations, and our whole community. Thank you.
Jean, thank you so much for those comments. As you were talking about some of the things that the folks at the ARC put together, I was the recipient of some of those as they came in the mail, some of the drawings and so forth. They were amazing. And thank you so much for sending those along. Thank you very much. So our next speaker, in addition to being a Greater Lowell Community Foundation board member, Sheila currently serves as the Chief Public Policy and Equity Officer at Lowell Community Health Center. In this role, she leads community health strategy, leads the development, design, implementation, and evaluation of public health programs with a focus on racial and health equity, and oversees advocacy efforts on state, federal, and local public policies to advance the well-being of our community. Those particular skills, Sheila also brings to the GLCF boardroom as we look to do more as we can with regard to racial equity in our community. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sheila.
Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. I'm just so inspired so far by everything that I've heard. I'm trying to regroup so that I can focus on the remarks, but a lot has been said, and I will echo some of the same. So it is an absolute pleasure to be here with you, and thank you to the Foundation for inviting our health center to speak, and for so many for being here for our community over what proved to be a very difficult year. I'm incredibly grateful to the Foundation for creating this space and for us to gather to share our stories of communities and strength, truly. I have to say that thinking about my remarks and what I was going to say gave me some pause because so much has happened over the past year. It's a bit of a blur. So this gave me an opportunity to reflect, and for that, I thank you. First, I want to do a quick, share a little bit about who we are as a community health center. For those of you in the room, consider this a refresher. But the health center was founded in 1970 to make sure that everyone in Greater Lowell had access and has access to quality, compassionate, and culturally responsive healthcare services, regardless of their ability to pay. We're a federally qualified community health center, and we offer services to roughly 50,000 people each year. Of note, 42% of those that we provide services for are best served in a language other than English. We provide a wide array of healthcare services, including behavioral health services, office-based addiction treatment, dental and vision services, and we have a lot of community health programs that go out into the community to do education and outreach. We currently employ nearly 380 staff, of which 40% live in Lowell. And our board of directors, I see many here today, so thank you so much for coming. I'm looking at my screen as I'm looking. I love this. Thank you so much for setting this up this way, because I get to see all the faces. 51% of our board are health center patients who keep us grounded on our mission. So it's a little bit about who we are. Now, I want to start by sharing with you a couple of hashtags that I have been utilizing on my own social media over the past year throughout the pandemic. And it's in English and in Spanish, and it's Together We Can, y juntos se puede. And that is because everything that we have done, we've done together as a community. And this includes the work of the foundation. We just heard two amazing examples and so many different stories. Back in March, I'm sitting in our incident command leadership meeting, and our incident commander, Beth Hale, said, we must vacate our health center. 450 staff, 32,000 patients that rely on our healthcare, and the words, we must vacate the building, were said. At that time, my phone goes off and I see a text that says, Mom, be safe. I left the office with our entire team, and I remember seeing the empty waiting rooms. Now, for those of you who know our building at 161 Jackson Street, we normally see about 1,000 people walking through those doors on a daily basis. Easy. So you can imagine walking through the building, it being empty. It was such an eerie feeling. In 2 days, our lives completely changed. And somehow we managed to do the unimaginable. For us, and at that moment, was providing care remotely via telehealth. And we did. Michelle, one of our patients, thanked us for not canceling her appointment. She really needed to discuss her treatment for her diabetes. And although the visit was over the telephone and both her and her doctor were new to this, somehow they figured it out. We got a medical interpreter, and for Michelle, that meant having two familiar voices she knew at a time that was so uncertain and giving her just a little bit of hope. Again, together we can. Soon after, we faced another unthinkable and very painful moment for us. We furloughed close to 1/3 of our staff. I personally made more than a dozen phone calls to our staff explaining what felt like the most ironic thing, and by far, probably one of the hardest things that I have done, furloughing our public health staff during a public health pandemic. See, our health center's financial viability was at stake, and this pandemic hit us hard. We were not immune to the economic impact this has had. The healthcare system itself is incredibly convoluted, and the reimbursement mechanisms are very antiquated and did not keep up with how quickly we needed to shift. So, needless to say, the furlough hit the news. How can it not? And a health center that serves as a beacon of light in our community, all of a sudden found its own light flickering. The foundation noticed, and that's when Jay and Howard called us. What can we do? How can we help? And you can almost hear them say that. And that phone call alone gave us hope. That phone call gave us the strength that we needed. And like that call, we received phone call after phone call, email after email from donors, volunteers, and so many people in this virtual room. Our community coming together not only rekindled our light, but made us stronger than ever. Together we can, juntos se puede. Now, the foundation quickly mobilized to get funding, to continue funding vital services like our medical interpretation so that we can continue to provide those services to patients like Michelle. We also were able to secure funding to support our outreach work and our workers who were continuing to do broad education, supporting and connecting our community to resources like Kamuk, who found himself being isolated due to being COVID-19 positive with no family members or support. Our outreach workers very quickly stepped in and contacted the Merrimack Valley Food Bank, the Dwelling House of Hope, Community Teamwork, all agencies that have been touched by that foundation. Again, together we can, juntos se puede. Then came the reckoning with racism and the declarations across the nation that racism is a public health crisis. And I'll say that as a community health center, our work is rooted in the health center movement, which now spans over 50 years. And nationally, we as health centers were established by a very determined group of community and civil rights activists who fought to improve the lives of those living in deep poverty and in desperate need of healthcare. In June 2020, the year of what I call the double pandemic, we have racism on one side and its impact on health and public health. And then we have the COVID-19 pandemic, which fully exposed the inequities that exist in our society. Our health center adopted a board resolution on racial equity and declared that racism is a public health crisis, because it is. That resolution reaffirmed our commitment to equity, reaffirmed our commitment to our community, and reaffirmed our original duty as a community health center from our very inception. And since then, we further expanded the work in that space. Now, with all of this in mind, and as vaccines became available, we knew we had to be intentional about our approach, about our education, about how we were going to go about community organizing. That's when we picked up the phone and we called the Greater Lowell Health Alliance. And Carrie, I think, is on the call here somewhere. And asked to partner on creating a group of people, bringing a group of people together that would focus on the equitable rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine. And without hesitation, the GLHS said, absolutely. Now, we reached out to our community partners and everyone said the same thing. And 3 days before Christmas, a group of 40 of us got together to initiate that discussion and to begin the planning. Once again, together we can. At the same time, back at the health center, all of our teams, from clinical to our patient support and patient access teams, were working really hard to create a COVID-19 vaccine clinic. Side by side, we have our community health center, we have our community working towards one common goal. When we launched vaccination in February for patients 75 and older, we were all very much waiting how this was all going to pan out, supporting our staff and our community who has spent hours upon hours doing the education, preparing for this moment. And we had many questions swirling in our minds. Did we reach enough people with education? Did our intense community outreach efforts work? Then Fernando walked in smiling. Fernando is a 75-year-old Spanish-speaking man who walked in with a joyful spirit and said, "Hola, I knew you would call." Smiling, the kind of smiles that we see with the eyes because of all the masks that we've been wearing. And he received his first COVID vaccine. That supported by a medical interpreter that was funded via our foundation here in Lowell to assure that he understood every single step of the way. His appreciation for us calling him, for us providing medical interpretation and a vaccine in a place he considers his home, can be understated, or rather overstated. Now, patient after patient, all with the same energy, hope and optimism reaffirmed our role as a community health center. Once again, cementing the fact that together we can. I'll close with saying that as we move forward, we're taking all these lessons over the past year and we have renewed our resolve. Community is at the center of our name, and that's deliberate. We are community, our people, our shared experiences, our ability to influence our surroundings, our sense of trust, belonging, safety, and the caring of each other. As we think about community, know that all of our collective efforts, whether big or small, in form of financial contributions or volunteering or supporting in any other way, are incredibly important. Our collective power truly fuels us and propels us forward. Moments like that time when the foundation called us, and so many of you reached out to support us, to walk with us on this journey, validate that there's power in community, that when people unite for a common purpose, anything is possible. I truly thank all who have consistently been there for our communities over the past year, for your incredible generosity, for helping, for supporting, for encouraging our communities. And I will say that together we did, together we can, and together we will absolutely will. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sheila, for those comments. Very nice. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Isa Woldeguiorguis. Isa has been the executive director of the Center for Hope and Healing for almost a decade. Center for Hope and Healing has served victims of rape and sexual assault, provided education and awareness raising to eradicate sexual violence in the Greater Lowell area for some 45 years. Prior to this, Isa has worked in the anti-violence field for some 25 years, holding several statewide and national roles in the movement to end sexual and domestic violence. Please welcome Isa.
Thank you very much, Jay. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for having us. Okay, I've been an opener and a closer at many events, and I don't know whether the closer role in this event is going to prove to be the toughest role ever, given my esteemed colleagues' comments, and particularly Sheila's wonderful, wonderful comments. I have already been inspired and learned so much from each of you, so I'm grateful to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isa Woldeguiorguis. I use she, her, and hers pronouns. I'm the executive director at the Center for Hope and Healing, as Jay said. And our mission is to end gender-based violence, including sexual violence, by ending the use of oppressions that enforce violence as a tool. We provide crisis intervention, trauma-based support, and we partner with community to educate and organize and interrupt cycles of oppression and violence. That is a cornerstone of the work we do. We are so grateful to the GLCF for inviting us and for partnering with us all along the way this past year. We are an amazing community of organizations, of supporters, right? Some of us larger organizations, some of us smaller, and all in between. We've created a beautiful tapestry, a beautiful safety net, as we all have come together. And that has even been displayed so well this afternoon in my colleagues' comments. Today's theme, like everyone has said, Stronger Together, resonates for us as well. One, because it's a cornerstone of our work. We work in and with community, in a community that has many assets, and particularly culturally specific organizations and leaders. Our many racial and ethnic activists and leaders make us stronger. And during this past year, we've seen that more than ever. The other reason this theme resonates for me is that when people ask how we made it through the past 15 months, I'm always reminded that we didn't do it alone. Our dedicated staff worked alongside community members, large, small, churches, schools, nonprofits, the health center, to do what we do. None of us could have done this alone. None of us could have made it through this year alone. Let me tell you a story about someone named Maria, who we worked with. Maria is a single mother. She has 2 children, ages 3 and 6. She recently had come to the US to care for her aging parents, who she was living with at the time. And she was beginning to take English classes when all of this began, and then things were shutting down. As we were going remote in March 2020, as you heard my colleagues say, those fateful days when we all realized the time had come to close our in-person offices were, for us as nonprofit leaders, so painful, right? Our heart is in our community. Our heart is with the people we serve. And we realized we had to step away from those in-person services. So we started reaching out to people. Like others said on the call, we had to pivot on a dime, literally from one day to the next, to do what we would do with eyes, with our presence, to do it behind a Zoom screen or to do it over a phone call. That was a tough pivot for us to make. So we started reaching out to everyone we were working with, providing, again, with GLCF support, PPE, supplies, gift cards, tablets, right? All of the things that have been said that people needed at the time. And we contacted each family that we had been working with. When Maria got the call, she was surprised. She was shocked, actually. ¿Por qué me llamas? Why are you calling me? And our advocate, counselor, had to inform her of what was going on, that shelter in place was happening, not to go out, not to go to the grocery store. Although she was grateful for the advocate talking to her, she was shocked. She was afraid for herself, for her family, and unsure of what this would mean, particularly for folks without documentation. Now, as we were racing around, thinking about gathering meat, toilet paper, paper towels, imagine what it was like for Maria, who thought that when she went out to get supplies, she would be grabbed and deported, right? So this is what equity means in the context of our work, right? That even the difficulties we were having and the fears we were having in this time, people of color, people whose first language is not English, people who feared deportation, were having an exponentially difficult time and were experiencing increased barriers. So we had to do a lot of education, a lot of translation, and a lot of work with our community to understand what they could do. Institutional racism and inequities made it for us so that many of our non-English speaking survivors didn't even know what was happening. Maria didn't even know what she was facing. So you can imagine, as difficult as it was for us, imagine not even knowing what was going on and being behind the curve. Meanwhile, we know that COVID has had a disproportionate impact on our communities, and it's had a devastating health impact, financial and social impact. Ultimately, Maria has continued working with her advocate to get all the materials translated. She was able to get health information and ultimately vaccination for her family, and tablets and electronics for her children who had previously been using a cell phone to get online and to do their classes. So all in all, she has much more of the resources that she needed. Things such as language access and culturally relevant services really are life and death kind of services. They're not, the fluff or the lightweight stuff. The other impact for me that I want to mention is that this team member of CHH, who's done so much advocacy, has continued to be a voice in the Latinx community, advocating and bringing forth community needs. So it's activated her in a different way that I've also appreciated. The second point I want to make that's already been made, so I'll make it briefly, is about the absolute power of mutual aid and mutual support. During this time of fear and loss, we also saw our community step up. We saw trucks of food being given out at school site and other places across the city. We saw neighbors helping neighbors, going grocery shopping for elders, families helping families. This was the most powerful thing to witness, and it is ultimately the strength of our community, as has been said. People helping people. Those we serve, it's a reminder to me that those we serve and those we help are not bad or helpless people. They are our assets that we need and depend on when the safety net of everything else failed. Lastly, I want to tell you about one more person I will call T. When the outbreak happened, our hotline and crisis response, folks may know we do 24/7 crisis hotline, and we do emergency room advocacy for survivors. When the outbreak first happened, our hotline numbers went way down. They went down across the country. People weren't calling domestic violence, sexual violence hotlines. We all worried as a field, what is happening? We worried that survivors of domestic and sexual violence were forced to shelter in place with abusive partners or family members. We were reminded that not every home is a safe place to be in. So T was someone we were very worried about. They had experienced years of horrific abuse, and it was only getting worse during COVID. There were very few options. Even shelters weren't allowing people to, weren't taking in people at that time. So we continued to safety plan with them. We continued to go to them, provide support. And sometimes that support was just breaking the isolation, dropping by some food, materials, just to demonstrate we're still here. We haven't forgotten about you. We care about you. Call us, right, if you need. As things got worse and worse, eventually we're able to support them leaving, finding a safe place, staying with family members. Again, through the generous donation of support of the GLCF and other donors, we were able to support that household with rental assistance, with food assistance, and essentials that they needed. The T not only became safer, T began to work with others in their community to become a bit of a community organizer. They started dropping off food and supplies to others in the community, passing out information and phone numbers, and just being an advocate against violence. So it was an amazing honor to not only support this person and their journey towards safety, but to witness them going from victim to survivor to thriver and to advocate. So that was an amazing gift to us to be part of that journey. So again, I won't make my comments repetitive of what's been said and said so beautifully from myself, the board, staff, and volunteers that make up the CHH team. I just want to express deep appreciation to GLCF and all of our partners, and to each resilient community member. Because of your love and your courage, we not only survived, we're moving ahead stronger together. So thanks again. This has been a wonderful space.
Thank you so much, Isa. Thank you so much. And I want to thank also Tim and Jean and of course Sheila for their comments. You know, we all know that we could tell 100 stories like this. There were many, many, many stories that occurred over this last year and a half that are like this. These stories don't get old. I am inspired by them and motivated by the passion and the dedication of so many of our community partners within the Greater Lowell area. I am honored to work and proud to work with all you great folks that do amazing work day in and day out. As I know all the staff of the Greater Lowell Community Foundation are, and as well as the board itself. So thank you all so much for all the work that you do. Now, before I let you go, in the event that you have not heard enough and you want to talk some more, because only a few of us got to talk, we're actually going to have 2 breakout rooms. One breakout room will be with me, and then the other breakout room will be with Howard. I'll let you guys decide what you think is the better deal. And by the way, if you choose one and don't like it, you can actually go back to the other one. But we've done this because on so many occasions, and certainly the first time we did the Zoom thing, all of a sudden you hit leave meeting and everyone's gone. And I really miss that. I miss the opportunity that follows to have some discussion, to interact with some folks, to do a little networking. I mean, typically we're doing this in person, which is more fun. And I'm looking forward to getting to that in the not too distant future. But in view of the fact that we can't, that is the next best option. So as I conclude here, you will see on your screen an option to go to one of the 2 different places. And so with that said, I just want to say again, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been an amazing year, partnering with amazing people. I hope we never go through anything quite like this again. But I'll tell you, the partnerships and the relationships that were built over this last year will last forever. And thank you so much.